Hi, this is Congressman Hultgren. I want to just get in touch with you today. Negotiations are still continuing out here in Washington, D.C. on the idea of raising our nation's debt level. I wish I was directly in those leadership discussions. Unfortunately, I'm not, but we are having a direct impact on that, talking with our leaders, making sure that we are carrying forward your voice and your concerns to our leaders. In fact, just last night we had a very significant vote here in the House of Representatives. It was the first significant step on this very important issue. We passed the cut, cap, and balance provision. It was a legislation that I was a co-sponsor of. I think this is so important to recognize that we do have a very serious debt problem here in America, and we have to change the direction of how we're spending money here in America, and this is our opportunity to do it. So we had this legislation passed with bipartisan support last night. It was both Republicans and Democrats who supported that legislation. It does some important provisions. First of all, it makes real cuts in the 2012 budget. It reduces it back down to about 2008 levels of discretionary spending. It also puts caps in place to make sure that future Congresses, there's a limitation on the amount of money that can be spent. And then it also puts forward a balanced budget amendment that is so important to make sure that our nation stays on track for the long term. It is, again, we need to recognize that this is a burden that is placed on our kids and our grandkids if we don't address this right now. For every child that's born in America, they inherit $45,000 of debt the day they're born. And we need to turn that around. We need to change that so that our kids and grandkids have hope for the future. We also need to fight both the threat of downgrade and the threat of default. It's not one or the other. That's why it's so important to address both of those things, and this cut, cap, and balance legislation does address both the threat of default, making sure that we don't default on our payments to our creditors, but also make sure that the credit agencies don't downgrade us, which would drive up the cost for every single American. We must force this government to live within its means and ensure a brighter future for our kids and our grandkids. I do want to address quickly the President's threat to veto this legislation. It is so frustrating to me when he keeps talking about a big deal, but there is no detail to that big deal. We have presented something that we've shown can get 218 votes, the only piece of legislation that has passed a House in Congress to show that it could move forward. The cut, cap, and balance does that, but recognizes that if we are going to address the debts and the out-of-control spending that previous Congresses have been involved in, we have to change direction for our nation and make sure that this never happens again. This legislation does that. As we are moving forward, we are going to continue to encourage the Senate to take this up and the President to take this up to make sure that it does happen, that there is passage of this important legislation, and if we're going again to address the bills that have been given to us, we need to make sure that our credit cards are being cut up so that we never get in this situation again, that our future generations can have every opportunity that we've been afforded as well. So thank you so much for joining me today, and again I want to let you know what a privilege it is to serve you here in Washington, D.C.